All right, this session is called Navigating Emotionally Charged Situations. And what I love about this is that there are so many situations at work that this is applicable to. The loss of a loved one or an employee, of course, but also think about, um, especially as managers. I mean, I think back to my management of people and think about comp conversations, comp plans, like the rollout of a new comp plan, or discussion about a career path and raises and promotions, maybe demotions, even disputes between employees, time off, project assignments, performance reviews, layoffs. Probably too many to list. We could probably go on a pretty lengthy list here. This covers a wide range of things that could happen as a manager at work. Okay. So presenting with us today is Holly O'Hearn. Holly is the owner, facilitator, coach, and keynote speaker at Regime Change, a company focused on leadership development, team building, DEI, and mental health centered cultures. And I like how she specifically talks about mental health centered cultures, a culture centered around mental health. It's fantastic. She's led training and development for over a decade, including serving as a manager of people strategy, employee development, and DEI at United Airlines before becoming the head of DEI training at Matheson, then off to build her own company, Regime Change. She's a Brene Brown certified Dare to Lead facilitator, which I think is super cool. So is the rest of it, but that kind of stands out to me. And she spoke at SHRM conference last year, and super cool, holds a Cornell University certification on DEI and is studied as a part of a 9-month trauma-informed workplace cohort. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to us today. We are here, so please use the chat. We are here. I'm saying that very intentionally. So please use the chat with questions, comments. I brought, I think, 100 bereaved bucks today to give away. I'm still not sure what we're going to do with those, but we'll dish them out as we go if you want to participate. Holly, we're privileged to have you here and learn from you. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Holly.
Thank you. And before I go into professional mode, I just have to say your bereaved bucks remind me of that show from back in the day, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where you weren't sure what the points were for, but they were there. So I like your style. Well, hello, everyone. I will have slides up, but I take them down every now and then. So sometimes we'll have them, sometimes we won't. I'll tell you a bit about myself as we get started, and I'll put some links about me in the chat. Let's see if I do this right. But also, I would love to know about you. So while I do some of this introductory stuff, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat and would love to know your name, where you are, and then just because it's topical, I'd love to know an emotion that you've been feeling today. And feel free to be authentic with that. If someone says frustrated, none of us are going to be like, is that about me? I mean, just be authentic, just share some emotions, at least one that you've been feeling today. And anything else you'd like to share about yourself too is welcome in the chat. Yeah, we are here for navigating emotionally charged situations, and I will do some slides for us here. So, you know what you signed up for. This is why we're here. And I do have the introductory request in the chat for you. By the way, if anyone wants to share their pronouns, feel free. Mine are she, her, hers. I never require that of people, but it's an option. If anyone wants to share name pronunciations, like I said, share what you want about yourself. And I'm glad to see those coming through. Ready for the beach is definitely an emotion in my book. I'm going to take a look at all this in a moment here. But so, yeah, I mean, Justin did me justice. I really appreciate it. I'm primarily a facilitator, but I've been expanding into speaking, into coaching, into some other things. And more primarily, I just think about like my 20+ year career and then what I've been doing in the last couple of years. So the dichotomy of those. And I'm a proud Chicagoan. I volunteer in Chicago. I feel like volunteering is an important way we can be part of the communities that we're in. And I do a lot of work with the Chicago Coalition to End Homelessness. But beyond credentials, I like to sometimes introduce an emojis. So emoji, humor me here. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois. I went to school around some corn in University of Champaign-Urbana. And I've lived in the city proper of Chicago ever since. I have navigated a lot of emotion in my life, loss, many types of grief, divorce, losing a cat, like lots of things. But also I'm a big I love a lot of things too, and I'm a big feeler. And I really feel like that informs my work. I told you a bit about my Chicago involvement. I love travel. Probably a lot of you do too. I love food and wine. I have a cat named Bella who I don't think will crash the party, but if she does, now you know about her. I love things that have to do with our brain and bringing that to people through speaking, etc. And then just that final emoji is just my company logo. And by the way, I call my company Regime Change because I find that the people who tend to gravitate towards this work, and I would say that Bereave, from what I've been following in the last year or so, is definitely aligned with that. So I would imagine a lot of you are. A lot of the people who gravitate towards these kind of things want to be the change that they wish to see in the world. And I think there are many healthy kinds of regime change that are out there of how we shift how leaders are showing up and how they're doing that. And emotions are a big part of that. What else do I have for you? I like told you these things. I love things that bring people together through intersectionality. And then, I don't know. I think just photos are fun. So there's me meeting Brene in 2019. I do a lot of things virtually too. It's not all in person. And I've been on some podcasts recently. And then, I did speak at a well-known conference about grief last year, which is part of what helped me find Bereave, because I feel like when we talk about the things that matter to us, we find our people. So I feel that way about Bereave, and I feel that way already about each of you. So that's a lot about me. I'll do our agenda in a moment, but I'm going to just stop sharing here, and I just want to take a look at what's going on over here. Good. We got a bunch of different locations. Thanks for the honesty and some of the emotions that we're feeling too. Yeah, love that. By the way, Justin, I'm going to put you on a spot. What's an emotion you've been feeling today? Oh, I see one of yours in the chat, but
Yeah,
wanna add to-
overwhelmed today.
yeah.
And most days, but also today.
Okay. Um, yeah, that one resonates for me too. There's a lot going on right now in general in the world.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, keep it up, everyone. I was telling Justin beforehand, I tend to live in the chat. Like I love just seeing stream of consciousness. Even if you all like have a funny thing you want to say, like feel free to put that in there too, as we get going. So, okay, cool. Well, so for our agenda, where we're headed today in this short time together, we already accomplished the welcome introduction, so done. We'll talk about just examples of emotionally charged situations. They'll talk a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes of emotionally charged situations, and then we'll spend a good amount of time building out our tools, so supporting ourselves and others. And then just the benefits of doing the work involved in all of this. We'll close. We'll have time for questions if there are any, but there may be some throughout, and that's cool. And like I said, my goal for you is that you're each walking away building out your own healthy toolbox. So I'll use the word toolbox a lot. What I love about that analogy is different tools fit different situations. And sometimes you got to try a couple, and different ones might work. I might better be using a certain tool than you, but you might be better at using a different tool than me. So hopefully we'll continue to build those out together as we go here today. I want to start with some questions that I'll ask you all. This one, as we think about just examples of emotionally charged situations at work, I'd love to know in the chat, what are some things that come to mind for you? So as you think about that question, feel free to like kind of go anywhere with this. And I'll put the prompt in the chat as well too here. What are some examples? And I'd love to see what you've got.
Holly, while they're typing, I'll throw out comp is always one. I used to lead sales teams, and rollout of comp plans or execution of comp plans, like you're messing with people's money. That was always an emotional conversation. Sometimes a great one, usually not always.
Yeah, that's a great point. Almost anything with money could be emotional, in fact. So thanks for that example there. And I'm seeing, some also right on track ones in the chat, layoffs and riffs, reviews, any kind of feedback, in fact. New technology, Certainly grief-related ones, people losing family members or experiencing other kinds of loss. Yeah, reviews and comp, they were tracking with you with the comp there, Justin. Yeah, changing policies, restructures, navigating change, strategy change, yeah, mistakes, which we're human, so we're going to make mistakes. Oh, thanks for bringing up even just the concept of time. Yeah, needing something quickly in general. Like I feel like as humans, being pressed for time is when a lot of our intentions or how we would want to do things just don't end up happening the way we'd planned, just because we feel time pressure about it. Yeah, pivots. Certainly, political, social unrest. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, people we talk a big game about full self to work. Well, maybe this group of people here knows better than that, right? But in general, we don't actually set people up for that, both from a grief and loss standpoint, but also from things that are happening to us in the outside world are coming in with us, but there isn't actually the space or the structure for how to process or how to navigate that with also doing our job. There's still a lot of expecting people to be robots in terms of what's professional. So yeah, these are great. Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, you all got pretty much the theme that I was going to have, but I'll just put mine on the screen. I'll put them all on here. So anytime there's fear, uncertainty, emotional exposure, hard conversations, conflict, giving or receiving feedback, both directions, as probably many of us well know, can be emotional, making tough decisions and problem solving, certainly experiencing grief and loss. And then I wanted to make sure I added anything related to our identity, the different layers of our identity, whether, gender, race, culture, disability, I mean, socioeconomic status, right? The list goes on. And any of our lived experiences, we're going to bring into situations too. We'll talk about more about this in a little bit, but if we've experienced something tough before and something now feels like that, that's going to be emotionally charged for us because we're remembering a past situation. Like if I had a, can I say the word shitty, Justin? Is that okay?
Yes.
If I had a shitty boss once and my new boss is starting to behave like them, even if it's not actually the same thing, like I'm going to get emotionally charged because it feels like it might go in that direction, or I'm on edge that it might, right? So anyway, lots of layers. If anyone thinks of any new ones, feel free to keep adding in the chat. Like I love a good aha moment of like, oh, this is emotional. We don't talk about that, right? It's really quite a variety. Just because you're my friend in the arena here, Justin. Anything you'd add or any thoughts you're having before I move on?
No, this is a great overview. I mean, I see the word conflict. I think about some of the peer to peer conflict, especially again back on the sales side, thinking about territories and assignments and things like that I've had to navigate, and that has always been a struggle for me. But when I see conflict, it's not just me to somebody; it's also managing conflict among employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, like conflict is healthy, but that doesn't mean we enjoy it. I mean, I guess some people might, right? But like just the idea of like we can know that something is an important discussion, but that doesn't mean we can turn off the emotions related to it. And that doesn't mean we're not going to feel discomfort around that. So yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so let's move on here, and I'm probably going to get a little excited in this section because we're going to talk about the brain for a minute coming up, and I love talking about the brain. I joke that like I'm not a neuroscientist, but I try to play one on TV. Anyway, I dabble in neuroscience as it relates to my work, so that'll come up in a moment here. But some things that are happening behind the scenes in any of these type of emotionally situations. First of all, have a lot to do with just humans. So even before the brain, I just want to talk about some humanity stuff. So humans, we feel more emotions during times of fear, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And especially when we feel lack of control or scarcity, or fearing that we might be irrelevant or becoming irrelevant. These are some of the hardest things for humans to feel. Also, lack of connection is another one as well, too, which probably has come up in a number of themes related to grief and losses, too, because unfortunately, we isolate people in our society related to that, which hopefully all of us here today are working to shift. But as I mentioned earlier, we might layer on some of our past experiences, and we might be doing that unconsciously. We might not even know that's happening. It's like, why is this feeling tricky? Well, it could be because our brain or our body is remembering something, and it feels like that could be happening again. Any of us who have experienced trauma, discrimination, any other kinds of hardships, that we're going to be a bit more sensitive than other people. And I think that's also a good thing in other scenarios, but it can be times also where we get maybe more emotional than we'd expected in some situations. And so, unfortunately, though, I love our brains. Our brains don't always help us out. And actually, let me check if anyone knows what I mean by that statement. When you hear, it's okay if you don't, by the way. But if that resonates for anyone, that our brains don't always help us out, I'm just curious if any comments are in the chat about that before I do my little thing. Sure, intrusive thoughts. Yeah, anxiety. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, our memory may not be reliable. Humans, I mean, we file our memory, different, especially when there are things like emotion involved. Yeah. Actually, sometimes we have trouble remembering stuff too if it was hard. So there's a lot there. Yeah, stories we tell ourselves. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Feel free to keep adding some stuff here. So this first of all, this is not my brain. This comes from Conscious Discipline Brain State Model. If you want to look more into that, I like to make sure I share sources and credit. But this really changed some things for me, and I've added some of my own ahas that I've learned from myself and my participants over the years here. So when we receive information, it comes in through our brainstem, and that is assessing for survival. So any information that's coming into our brain, any situation that we're in, we're first asking ourselves if we're safe. And we're not necessarily doing that consciously. It's sort of just like a bodily response of, do I feel safe or not? So anytime we feel ourselves getting defensive, that could be our brain thinking we're not safe. And, this was particularly helpful, in early human times, if wild animals were chasing us, like you want to be assessing safety, right? The thing is, our brain treats, like let's say someone, we think someone's trying to discredit us in the workplace or something like that, that can register as the same kind of threat to our brain as if we were being attacked by an animal. Like, our brain is just looking for safety. And so when we don't feel safety, there's some really visceral responses. And if we don't feel safe, it actually makes it hard for the information to go anywhere else in our brain. I'll tie this all together in a bit, I promise. But so the next phase is, let's say I do feel safe. There's still going to be some emotional processing that happens next. So how do I feel about what's going on? Uh, you know, we can get stuck in emotions sometimes as humans. Emotions are good. Even tough emotions are important. We need all of our emotions. So I'm not hating on emotions here. But we can get stuck in emotions if we're not feeling them and then releasing them. And some of the ones that feel hard for us to feel is when we get stuck in them. So I'll come back to that. Let's say, though, I'm able to process my emotions and get to the next phase of things. This is when I can really get to the logical part of my brain. So this is where we're problem solving, we're learning, etc. It's really hard to get to this part of our brain with information if we get stuck in any of the earlier phases. So, I mean, I guess let me just ask, you could just put like yes or no in the chat, but like, is this resonating for you? Are you realizing that you or someone else might have been stuck at some part of their brain now as you're thinking back on some interactions? Capital, yes. We love a caps lock. Yes, we do.
I feel like, Holly, sometimes my brain goes straight to 3, and I completely forget that this is an emotional thing for somebody else, right? And I go
Mm.
straight to problem solving. And then might even do like oh shoot, like this is actually a pretty big deal and I need to backtrack, right? So I go to and I don't know if that's a this is a progression necessarily as much as it is just how, or if I just skip the first two, but that really stands out to me as a both a strength and I would say oftentimes a weakness of mine, is that I kind of skip the other two things.
That I really am grateful you shared that. Yeah, I mean, first of all our brains are going to work a little differently, right? But also, I wonder if maybe in some situations you aren't getting stuck is all that's happening potentially. But that also, as humans, we're also good at repressing. So I love that you're curious to explore. You know what I mean? It like
Yeah.
I wouldn't know, but I bet that that's resonating for some other
Mhm.
people too. And I'd say really to me, the main lesson of this, it, it's hard to use multiple parts of our brain at the same time. Just to like get real nerdy, and I bet some other people here are familiar with this. It's part of why I'm not a therapist. I have been in a lot of therapy in my life, though. One of the things I've done in therapy is I've done uh, bilateral stimulation work with my therapist, where basically there are ways you can try to get the left and the right side of your brain um, firing at the same time, and that actually helps humans process trauma. Anyway, again, I do not have necessarily any qualifications that accept experiencing it, but to me, it's like, oh yeah, like using different parts of your brain isn't necessarily the same at the same time, and it's easy to get stuck where then when we don't have access to parts of our brain. So anyway, you all know I'm not a neuroscientist, so I could be saying these things with just a slight wording off being, but this is the general concept. Let me tell you how it plays out for me. So I'm going to give just like a worked example that could be emotionally charged. So you all, know from my intro that I do a lot of DEI, DEIB work. I don't think that's a political thing, in my opinion. I think it's important to just acknowledge humans for who they are and listen to other experiences, right? And so I'm a big fan of DEI, and let's say I did something that was offensive to you or didn't acknowledge your lived experience. I would want to know. I would want to know. I'd want you to tell me, right? And that's me and my logical brain saying that. But let's say, I don't know, Justin, let's say I said something right now that offended you or didn't acknowledge your lived experience. And let's say you paused and said, hey, Holly, I don't know if you know, but that term you just used is offensive. I know you'd want to know that. Even though I logically want to know that, that doesn't mean I might not feel threatened in that moment, right? Like I might feel like, oh no, my credentials are being diminished, or Justin doesn't like me anymore and no one's going to hire me for a workshop again. Like these are the kinds of things that happen when we don't feel safe. Now, if I can breathe through that and stay in my body and think like, no, that like I'm safe, everything's fine. That's a good thing that's happening. That means that Justin trusts me. That means that Justin thinks I'm capable of change. That means I've created enough safety that Justin can do that, right? Then I might move to emotional, and then I might feel something like I might feel shame or embarrassment or confusion. Maybe I didn't know the thing I said was offensive. I don't know, right? And there's so many examples of this. Like it could be when someone talks over you in a meeting, right? It doesn't have to be about offending people, right? But if then I'm like, again, like, no, I'm okay. Like, and maybe I'll spend some time processing this later. I'll come back to this emotion, but like I can tolerate this. I do maybe some of my own nervous system regulation that we'll talk a little bit about later. Then I can move to logic. And that's where I can say, tell me more. Like what would be a better phrase, or like thanks for telling me that, or like hey, I want to just check like how can I make this right now. That's where I can access some of that logical stuff. And the same thing is if I'm in a conflict at work, or if I disagree with someone about how we should handle something, I might need to work through that stuff before I can get to the solutions. And so when we try to rush other people to solutions and they're stuck in any of this other stuff, that's why it doesn't work, right? That's why unsolicited advice is so unhelpful. Because a lot of times people aren't even there yet, let alone they didn't give us consent for it, right? But we can have empathy for it because we also realize how it can happen, and we realize when it's happened to us. So I'm going to pause there. That was a lot. I'm going to take my slides down for a moment. I'd love to know what's resonating in the chat, questions, aha moments anyone's having. Justin, how's this landing for you?
This is great. I actually started typing it. It's much more personal than it is professional, but I continually think like from that image, I'm in number three, my wife is in number two
Exactly.
all day long. And that presents like when there's conflict between the two of us, it's because I've gone there and she's like, hold on a second. I haven't talked about how I feel about this yet. And I'm already on to trying to solve. Right. And just in that relationship, which I see every day, um, I can feel that and how that might show up with people that I manage.
Yeah, yeah, you're getting some support in the chat too. You're not the only one who's thinking about personal situations. Yeah. Yeah, and the jumping to solutions while they're listening, and that goes all directions. Um, it's also why I know a lot of you brought up examples of, layoffs and rifts, which some of this stuff we can't avoid, but it's why, immediately jumping to next steps and like the package and all of that, people can't often hear when that's going on because they're like processing what's happening. And I think that's another piece is until we get to the logic part of our brain, it is hard for us to hear. It's hard for us to understand other people, et cetera. And that, it's something that we can have a little more empathy for, I think, with each other is like, there, it wouldn't be productive to either of us for me to fast forward right now. Like it would be a waste of both of our time for me to try to force us through this. One other thing, I told you I was going to get excited, is if you think about being a people leader, a lot of times we learn tough information before the people we're going to communicate it to. And so we've maybe had more time to work through our reactions to the information. So we're farther along when we share information with someone else. And so we might be at solutions already, but this is the first time they're hearing about it, right? And so they have and then they're laying on their own life experiences and all of that too. So I think it's also quite an important responsibility for people leaders to take into mind. Um, and it reminds me of a quote. I promise Brene Brown is not the only thing that I like quote in my life, but it is obviously a big influence on me. But she has a quote from her Dare to Lead book that leaders can either spend a small amount of time, I'm paraphrasing it, a small amount of time investing in the fears of their feelings, or spend a large amount of time at managing the behaviors that result from it. And so it is, even though it feels like we're wasting time, we're actually investing. And if we try to fast forward, there's just a lot of stuff we'll just have to deal with later because we didn't spend that time ahead of time. So sometimes that's how I motivate myself when I find myself wanting to fast forward with someone is like this actually will take more time in the long run. It's worth the time now. And then how do I take care of myself in the meantime, which is where we're headed next. So I haven't seen any questions come through. Uh, yeah, unsolicited advice almost always skips right over the feels. That's right. We could actually, I kind of want to do a whole class on unsolicited advice. So maybe that's something I'll finally develop after today. Justin, any questions that are coming to mind for you before I move us along?
No, this is fantastic. I would say, I mean, you solicited that advice, I think, so I'll say we could move along.
Yes, I
Now,
did.
now I'm gonna overthink the rest of the day, no doubt.
That is a hazard of hanging out with me. I am overthinking all the time, and I tend to bring it out in others. But I think it's also a strength. All right, so where we're headed, I'll do slides in a moment, is taking care of ourselves and then taking care of others. This is a brilliant group. Oh, thank you. I've been drinking out of mason jars recently. It's okay. Tangent squirrel. Apparently, George. I'm a dropper and a spiller. Everything in life, and I noticed that mason jars don't break as easily, and I'm upcycling, so it's like a win-win. It's good. So anyway, it's not necessarily like the most refined aesthetic, but yes, that's part of what I've got going on over here. Okay, so you all know I'm headed into taking care of ourselves. I know that you are a brilliant group, so you have some ideas already. Tell me in the chat, why do we need to take care of ourselves before we take care of others? So many good reasons. I'd love to know. Oh, no, I'll put my little prompt in there too.
Allison's coming through. hurt
Mhm.
people. Allison, that's 10 bereaved bucks right there.
I sometimes I snap when I'm excited, so snaps to the bereaved bucks, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's true. It's like, so we don't take things out on other people is why we need to take care of ourselves. Yeah. So we can be in the best headspace. Um, what else? And also there's all the analogies. If anyone wants to throw in one of the analogies that we know about that, all the analogies are welcome, or the phrases, etc.
I don't know the analogies. Can you share an
Oh
analogy?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you will know
Sorry, I
the
might have taken this off course, but I'm curious.
you will know this first one is the oxygen mask analogy. Um,
Sure.
yeah,
You're right. I do know that one.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Which actually kind of could apply to masking up in the pandemic too, now that I think about it. But uh, you know, and there may be others, but the one that I guess this is more like of a poetic thing. I think this is probably got older origins than I'm aware of, but you cannot give from an empty well. And there's some
Mm,
variations on that as well too.
sure.
It's like we really don't have anything for other people if we haven't recharged on our own.
Sure.
Actually, another one that comes to mind, I could even probably have done a slide for this. I'll think about that for next time. Is I've learned this from some recovery spaces. There's an acronym called HALT, which stands for Never Get Too Hungry, Angry, Lonely, or Tired. And it's that to me, that's about the self-care part of things. And clearly we're hearing me, I'm talking about more than bubble baths with self-care here, right? Like it's that idea of if we're not firing on all cylinders, we're not as good to anyone around us as we could be, right? And so anyway, those are just some of the things that come to mind for me. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But uh, let me get into some ways that we can do that, and then of course we'll get into how we'll do that for other people too. But yeah, thanks for the stuff in the chat here, y'all. So we one moment. So in terms of ways to take care of ourselves related to emotion, um, it really we need to identify what's going on. As I was mentioning, a lot of this stuff is happening behind the scenes or almost unconsciously for us. So to tap in and get a little more curious about what's going on within us, the more we have that we can do. So acknowledging to ourselves, naming it. It's actually part of why I had you all name emotions as part of our introductory stuff. Is when we can name an emotion that we're experiencing, that better allows us to feel it, and move through it. And so getting really specific about emotions and taking time to educate yourself on how many emotions are out there. Like there's a lot of emotions. When my therapist showed me this thing called a feeling wheel, which there's probably a lot of other resources out there too, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there were this many words. But as you spend time, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not, I'm not like this is sort of a simpler one, but I'm not angry, I'm frustrated, or um, I'm not tired, I'm sad, right? Like, or to get even more granular with that, then we can actually do something about it. Um, and when we're able to own those things with other people, which you also all did in the chat by naming it to someone else, that's actually bringing it to life even more. Not only because it's a little extra level of accountability for ourselves, but then as leaders, we're also giving other people permission that they could do the same thing. So if I have just a little more hierarchical power or any other kinds of like cultural power in a company of, maybe I'm in a department that gets a lot of cred, or maybe I've I don't know, who knows? There's so many things in every company that's different in terms of like power that we might have, or influence. But if we have any kind of influence, and we usually have more than we realize, we actually might be making it more safe for other people to name their emotions if we're taking the time to do that. So what that could look like is, let's say I'm kicking off a meeting and I'm realizing that I am feeling some grief today. And maybe I don't necessarily need to like overshare, but I could kick off the meeting and say, I'm noticing I'm feeling some grief today. I'm having just some memories coming through. So I just wanted to let you all know that if I'm a little different today, that's not about you. and I'm all right, but I'll let you know if I need anything, right? Any of that sort of like models to people that it's okay to name something that's going on. And maybe I do need something. Maybe another day I'm like, I may need you to repeat some stuff today, or whatever the thing is I might need. I could make a request. And then we start, over time, maybe asking other people what they need. Anyway, I'm getting into the other people thing, but that's why it's important to name it when you can. So then we want to just determine next best steps, which we kind of already talked about some next best steps, even like articulating it as something. But this is where we really want to be building out our healthy toolboxes to emotionally regulate. And a lot of that's going to be these goals of how we feel, how we release, how we process, how we find community or support, how we need it. And certainly getting professional support as we need it, right? There's going to be times where we might be like, you know what, this is something I need to talk over with a therapist, or different companies have other kinds of mental health resources. Maybe it's time to take advantage of some of those or look into them. So we'll get into more of the how to do that in a moment here, but hopefully these are making sense. If anyone has any questions, let us know. How are these tracking for you, Justin?
Good, especially that second bullet on the first arrow, the own your reality with others. I've worked for, been very fortunate to work for some leaders who um, did this very naturally. At least it appeared to be very naturally, and it made things that are often difficult to talk about less difficult to talk about, and often made them safe. And that was huge for the culture of one particular company that a lot of people wanted to work for on a very regular basis, which was a cool thing to be a part of. But just having those leaders be able to name those things publicly, um, you had your next layer and your next layer and your next layer all start to be able to do those things, and I think that it helped from a connection perspective, but it also helped from a support perspective as well.
That's so cool to hear. Yeah, there can be some game changers for sure.
Mm.
Cool. Well, I'd love to know from the group, what are some ways that each of you emotionally regulate? I'll put the slides down, but I've got it in the chat there. What are some things that help you process emotion, take care of yourself? I'd love to know some things. It could be little stuff. I love the little stuff. So don't think it's like not important enough to share. Like the littlest things are the best because we're more likely to remember to do the little things and they won't be as hard to do.
I think on the negative side, I'll share on the negative side, I tend to like pause and just take a few deep breaths. And I know that probably sounds like either very basic or maybe even just kind of typical, but that always helps me kind of just gather those the brain diagram. Like it helps me make sure that I'm safe, and then makes me figure out like, hey, where am I right now before I actually go try to do something. On the positive side, when something happens and I stay pretty emotionally regulated just in life, kind of that I kind of ride a midline as much as possible. But something that I've been working on for a long time goes really well. Um, I, I yell, I
Mhm,
yell,
mhm.
and I yell in joy and in excitement. It's usually just one or two quick words, and then it's over. But sometimes I just need to get it out.
Those are so good. I'm gonna try the yelling one now, actually, honestly. And yeah, the pause one, I told you, nothing's too small. Like, I mean, it buys us a little time. It lets everyone process another moment. Like there's so many. The breathing can be part of it. I'm seeing the breathing in the chat. Yeah, like breathing. I know it sounds simple, but there are actually so many kinds of breathing activities, and they're like, I think some people think of breathing activities as like fluffy stuff, but like breathing is used in many venues. It's used by athletes, it's used by Navy SEALs. Like, I mean, there are like many kinds of applications and types of breathing. Box breathing is one of them. That's one that I like a lot too. That one is easy to explain, so I'll just do it. But it basically, you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, you hold for 4, and then you do it again. So it's kind of like tracing a box. But there's lots of kinds. Like just going on research thing on breathing. You might each find some cool stuff, and some of the breathing activities might work better for you than someone else. Sometimes I'll do something like that before I go into a meeting I know might get emotionally charged. Is like, okay, let me just do some breathing so I'm at least entering in a good space, so proactive, and then also afterwards is good too. Music always, I love that we're adding headbanging to this. That's great. Because movement is part of it, by the way. So when we can move our bodies, like, how sometimes animals will shake off after like a fight, like that's a technique, is releasing. And so anytime we can move in different ways, that's a big one. Yeah, tell someone I need a minute. Talking it through with others, and probably certain people are better than others to talk through, I bet. Blue light glasses, that's a new one to me. I'm gonna try that one for me. Thank you. Yeah, tell myself I can do hard things. So I went straight to the we because of if you know, you know. There's a whole podcast and book and all of that on we can do hard things. So good. Yeah, get outside, nature in general. By the way, it's best to be in nature, but even picturing nature is something. Even listening to nature sounds is something, right? Like that. It helps. It tricks our brain a little bit in a good way, and I love when I can use my brain for good through learning how it works. Yeah, a run. Yeah, go Navy. Oh yeah, the five senses. Yes, that's a brilliant one. Is if we're thinking about what we can see, touch, taste, smell, or hear, that actually part of why that's so good is it brings us back to the moment we're in. And often when we're feeling emotional, we're going to something in the past or the future. And so our five senses bring us back to the current moment of like, okay, right now I'm actually fine though. So that's such a good one. Yeah, different ways to ground. I knew this was going to be a brilliant group. Thank you for this. Some of these will come back here as we're heading farther into our agenda. We're nearing the home stretch here, in talking about how to support others. So first of all, any of the things, and keep building out your own healthy toolboxes, but I'll put my slides back up here. Yeah, so as we're supporting others, we're really thinking about, and I'd love to know anything you would want to add in the chat here, is just how might we support other people. I'll let you do that kind of while I'm chatting, so do it real time with me, how about? But first, we don't want to assume we know what's going on or why they're upset. Humans, unfortunately, try to diagnose each other a lot, and we really can't do that because my grief might look different than your grief. My anger might look different than your anger, et cetera. And I could be bringing something in with me that isn't about us, or it could be about us. So we just never want to assume. We always want to check out. It's like, hey, how are you doing? Anything I can support? Maybe we even lead by saying how we're doing first. So there can be a variety of things there. If we're able to, we want to let them emote. And I will do a caveat. Actually, I should have done a little asterisk even of like, if you can, is if you are in a space to, and there will be times that you will not be, and then you might need to just ask for a break or ask to revisit instead. You are not responsible for helping another person work through their emotions or feel safe. But although actually I would argue as a people leader, we should be working to help people feel safe. But point is if you don't have capacity, that's okay. But then you do still need to give them time, right? Because we want to remember the phases of the brain. If we do have the capacity to let them emote, we're actually helping them process, is they're releasing by emoting. And so even if it's not productive, in our opinion, it is productive because it may be helping them move through it. So if we're able to do that, we want to be curious, try not to judge, and then we want to validate their reality. So that's not saying that we're experiencing the same thing, but it could be like, yeah, that sounds hard, right? Like I know that when I feel those kind of emotions, that's hard for me, or I get why that would be confusing based on what you're saying, right? So we're not, if our reality is different, especially if let's say they are emotional at us, we're not saying like I see it the same way, but if we're saying that makes sense, I hear you, I acknowledge your reality, that is helping people not be defensive, and that can help with safety and then processing emotion. Biggest thing is going to be asking people what support looks like. Too many times we're jumping to the solutions ourselves. And, my greatest hack to not do that is to just ask for consent. I don't think the word consent gets used in enough spaces. Like consent is everywhere, is basically, I'll do it with you, Justin. Let's say, you tell me you're really frustrated, rather than me being, okay, cool, let's handle this. I'll say, hey, would it help to hear how I might handle that? That's all we're doing, is we're just
Mhm.
checking. And you all probably know this from the experience you've thought of with grief and loss, is a lot of these things is like, rather than just hugging someone, would a hug be helpful? We just check, right? Would it be helpful to hear about a time I experienced something similar? Right? All that is we're so anyway, and that to me also moves us into the other one I had here, is just providing choices or options. Because sometimes when we ask someone what they need, they don't know, but they do know what they don't want. You know what I mean? So someone might not know what they need, but then if you are offering, like, would it help if I did this? They'll probably know, like, nope, I don't, that would not help, right? Or whatever it is. So that's a big piece. Oh, and yeah, I like this comment in the chat, is don't listen autobiographically, is like, yeah, we don't want to just immediately add on our whole life. We want to check if that would be helpful. And if not, we can tell someone else about it later that day, or we can journal about it, right? So some things to just, if anyone wants to add anything in the mix, I'd love to see them. By the way, I did pull, as you know, I have a more grief specific class. I did check my grief resources for other people, and I just pulled in that slide. There's so many commonalities. I'll just put them all on the screen here. Is naming your grief when you're able to is something you could do for other people, because then you're showing it's okay. Don't try to fix others' grief. Listen, ask questions, ask what support looks like, offer things, name what support looks like for you. And then the one thing that is newer here, that what didn't have a theme on the other slide, is just when we can form networks, communities, and mini spaces together. Any more places where people can connect can be good. And so we could try to get creative about that, just with general emotional situations, is like, where can we create more spaces where people can process emotion? And that could be interesting to think about. All right. I don't think I've seen anything else added, but you all know you can keep adding things to the chat if you want. Our final piece here that I had imagined this group was already tracking when you signed up for this in the first place is, let's talk about what are some of the benefits of using these tools to help people navigate emotionally charged situations. So here, I'll put that on the screen, and I'll put it in the chat too, but just like, what good, really the simple question is, what good could coming from do this stuff? Oh, and Allison's continuing to earn her bereaved bucks.
Yeah, it's 10 more. She's gonna come calling for those things soon. This benefit piece, and Jennifer's already on it, which is great. I think for me, I think about the word peaceful is coming to mind. I don't think that's the right word, but conversations, like productive conversations. They're not always peaceful, but they can be much more productive than when it's much more productive when I ask my wife, "Hey, do you want me to problem solve with you, or do you want me to just listen?" And she tells me. Much more productive than when I just guess and do one or the other. Uh, those don't always go as well. Um,
Yeah,
but it seems like progress is made, whether that's relational progress or situational progress.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. Some great themes coming through of an understanding culture at work. Uh, yeah, it's good that these things are top of mind. People will give each other more benefit of the doubt and grace. Yeah. Better team dynamics. Yeah, absolutely. Internal growth. Yeah. You're all tracking with what I was going to share here. So I'll put them all on the screen. Is, more people will feel seen, heard, understood, which leads to belonging. There could be more trust and safety on teams and in the workplace. And we can never guarantee trust, because only each of us as humans can say if or not trust. Well, trust too, trust and safety. I was going to say safety, but I used the word trust, and now I'm realizing they both work. But only I can tell you if I'm safe. No one can ever declare something a safe space, because I don't know what's safe for you, right? But we can create more safety, and we can do more things to increase the likelihood of safety, and then also trust. Certainly there'll be better quality work in the long run if we have all these benefits coming through, because people will be able to show up more fully at work, and get to more of the logical part of their brain. Certainly, more workplaces would eventually get designed with healing in mind, which would apply to grief and so many other things, right? Is if a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is what people need, this is what helps me, eventually decision makers are going to make some other choices, right? Or hopefully people like us all will help with that, right? Um, we could do more community healing. Like, a lot of community healing could be happening at work. How much of the world is at work? A lot of the world, right? And so if more workplaces had more of this in mind, and it's why, mental health informed cultures are so important to me, is we can do some good about shifting collective groups of humans. And then certainly people would feel better in general. And that could feel different for each of us. So certainly a lot of good things. Also, I'm trying not to get distracted by all these things coming in the chat. We'll take a look at some of them in a moment here. I do want to make sure I leave time for any other residual questions that come through. And as we're doing that, I would love to know any takeaways that anyone's starting to have for themselves. So I'll just put that prompt in the chat as well too. I have a couple that I can show you in a little moment here, but yeah, let me just check in. I'm gonna stop my screen. We'll put it up one more time in a little bit here. Anything you want to highlight that I might have missed in the chat, Justin?
I don't think so. There's some really good just answers to your questions, especially around the benefits. I really like Jamie Conrad's note about like what role do you want me to play right now.
Yeah.
Um, that's solid. That's kind of similar to the options that you talked about, right? Like give people options about how you can show up or what kind of support, or tell them what support might look like. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, I guess also as we're thinking about takeaways too, I'm curious what everyone's going to add to their own healthy toolbox as well too, knowing that that's going to be part of what helps us help other people. So if that resonates better for some folks, I'd love to see in the chat too, like what's something you're going to try out would be another cool thing. Okay. Well, here, let me give you some. Yeah, you do not have to be robotic to be professional. Snaps to that too. Let me put some takeaways that I'd love you to have on the screen, and if you want to just copy paste any of these, feel free. As we're thinking about, some key notes here is that it is a skill set to regulate our nervous system, and there's a lot to try out and to see which tools work and which don't, to try out each parts of the toolbox. And to be patient with ourselves when some things take practice, because we're trying something new, so it's building a new muscle. New muscles take practice to strengthen. So also, anytime you can practice these things, it's like, let's say you want to practice naming an emotion. Try it with someone who you feel really safe around, and say like, hey, you're having coffee with a friend. It's like, hey, this is gonna be weird, but I'm practicing emotions. Can I just tell you how I'm feeling today? That helps you, because then you've done it before in a low risk situation, that you have more access to try it in a higher risk situation. And eventually we can create our own muscle memory. We can sort of rewire our muscle memory. We can't help other people if we're dysregulated ourselves. So just more of the reason to take care of ourselves first. Emotions are a good thing, even the tough ones that we don't like. We're meant to feel emotions. That's how we were designed as humans, and we're meant to move through them. So try not to get mad at the emotions you don't like, but just like welcome them and feel through them and try your different tools. And then building a healthy toolbox and remembering to use it, which we have to help with the practice to do that. It does help us navigate these emotionally charged situations. Things I'd recommend that you all consider if you're not already is just keep building out the toolbox, practice using things, try not to force other people to getting into logic, be curious, ask questions, listen, validate, ask people what support looks like, and keep taking care of yourself and your nervous system. So some repetition, but in a good way. We'll have time to officially close, but because I won't have slides up again, let me just put my little thank you slide to all of you. And we'll take slides down now to just take a look at what else has come through in the chat. With some good takeaways here of, oh, I'm glad you're not the only one thinking about this too. Yeah. Noticing what brain state we're in. Yeah, trying some breathing stuff. Really good. Really good. Well, cool. Well, I'd love to hear your takeaway, Justin, and then feel free to end us as feels right for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to come in. I keep coming back to the picture of the brain, and I don't think I am as I didn't think I was as visual, but that visual is sticking with me to almost give me that opportunity to check in with myself. Like, where am I? I think George started to allude to that, um, and that will understanding that I think helps me respond right, which I think is the probably the proper way to do this compared to maybe what I normally do.
Love that.
Um, Holly, thank you so much for this. So insightful. Probably critical. I would argue to being a better manager, a better people leader. Thank you so much for this today. Appreciate your time, your partnership, your support of Bereave, of course, and really grateful that you were here today.
It was my pleasure. I really appreciate the space and joining you all.
Managers, HR teammates, recordings are going to be sent. I believe I believe it auto triggers recordings. I'll need to double check if that's not the case. I'll send them out. But they are going to be uploaded into the manager training section of Bereave. There are 6 other manager workshops that you can binge in the platform at your convenience. That are fantastic. We'll add Holly's in the next couple of days here, so that will be your spot to go. We've heard about people pulling those up and watching them together in small management groups, especially adding them to maybe a manager development training track. Like, those are all things to do if you're in need of something relatively quick. I know those pop up sometimes on the HR side. So feel free to jump in there and to leverage those. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be back with more manager workshops in September. Again, September, October, November. We will send out dates over the summer and start to fill in the blanks on who's who and when's when and what's what. Until then, be well. Grateful that you're here, and thanks for sticking with us to get a little bit better to serve your people. Talk soon.